This trip is one of the scariest trips I have had. I have told a lot of people this story, and most of them have said the same thing, that it is the scariest nightmare report they have ever read at the time. Now, even though this trip was, and still is, the scariest I've ever had, that is still not what all alone makes this report the horrifying story it was. This experience was 4 months ago, on a synthetic tryptamine, or what my plug said scientifically, 5-nicotine-tripropyl-tryptamine, which is not a real drug apparently. For those of you who don't know what a synthetic drug is made in a lab, or more simply, man-made. I get the appeal of compounds made for the sole purpose of being tripping balls, but the fact that these drugs can be made from literally anybody, anywhere, with virtually anything, does make these drugs likely to be dangerous. For all you know, you literally could have been the first person to have it, or at least the first person to have it in the dose you had. This drug, however, was literally everywhere at the time. I don't really know where it came from, but you would see homeless people on it all the time. You could tell somebody was high off of it just because of how they act. They acted utterly insane. The expression they had was always complete fear or a look of shock, and they would move their eyes around, like they were examining everything around them with the best detail they could. It was my town's meth at the time. My friends did it a lot, but I thought they were talking about a drug I heard in a trip report, DPT, another synthetic that causes salvia-like nightmare trips, so no way was I gonna do that stuff at the time. The first time I heard the name of the drug was when my plug had showed it to me. He said how it would last the whole day, how it was going to be the trippiest psychedelic I've had, but I don't believe this yet. If you have never had a plug that said that their stuff was the hardest shit you'll have at the time, when the day comes that you get one, just remember it's probably going to be the exact opposite. If this plug didn't have the best weed in all of Alabama, I would have never bought it. This plug was not lying though. This drug was harder than any acid, DMT, or salvia I have ever had. I decided that tomorrow I would be taking it, and I would go to bed at 6 a.m. the day after, the same time I woke up. I buy a freebase pipe from a homeless guy, and my friend and trip sitter at the time would make sure I don't have a bad trip. And let me tell you, this friend, Curtis, did all he could to help me. But nothing would work. Without him though, my life would have probably changed quite a lot this day, but that's to explain later. When this drug was ignited, it smelt like burning wood, paper, and plastic at the same time. It tasted like a really pure vape, like the kind made from tobacco, almost. When I exhaled, I started coughing pretty bad, which is weird because the smoke had not hurt all that bad. Kind of like a dab pen or something like that. 5 to 15 minutes later, I start to feel a buzzing or vibrating around my body. It felt pleasant, but also kind of overwhelming in some sense. I start to feel oddly clear-minded and understanding of everything. It's hard to explain, but it's like I knew the entire purpose of everything around me. I had explained to myself that everything was made with an idea in mind, and it was currently fulfilling what it was made to do. Every little thing I have wondered, pondered, or tried to understand was slowly making sense. I feel a deep feeling of belonging with everything else. Everything looked like it was growing in detail. Everything stayed still, but it looked like I was zooming into it. This is probably going to be hard to explain, but the colors I saw were more colory. Imagine if you were seeing in black and white your life, and you just put on color-seeing glasses. You were told what red and green were before you put the glasses on. But before you put the glasses on, colors to you were just brighter or darker lights. Everything felt like I just got a more true and more real perspective of it. The way the drug affected you was by coming in and out, like a mushroom trip. But every time you came out of it, you would feel almost sober, with a little bit of what feels like a very mild high. When the affect came back in, it felt different, however. Everything had the physics of a water balloon, or like jello in some way. Whenever I touched anything, it would almost cause a ripple effect. I thought of this to be a second reality hidden within ours. I am still in my reality, but I was seeing everything in a different one. I explained this liquid-like effect to my trip sitter, who says I said, "It's like the universe was jello and God was playing with it before he eats us all." I look down at my hands and my veins start to branch out. I have so much veins around my body. I scream out of happiness for some reason. When Kurt asks what I feel, I explicitly shout, "I'm fucking Blood Man." He laughs, of course. A little bit later, when I am watching TV, every noise the TV makes sounds like reverb, and it is a little bit slowed down as well. At random intervals, the sound becomes more repetitive, like an echo going on forever. My thoughts start to jumble up. As soon as I could think of something, another thought would appear. I go to the bathroom and made the mistake of looking at the mirror. I start to freak out. Everything started to sway in these nausea-inducing patterns. I saw my face actively switch from big-ass smile on my face to shock, which scares me even more. Luckily, this was close to when the come-down happened again. So this was the worst of what happened. I never got bad trips at the time of this happening. This experience has caused more bad trips in the future, though. So this scares me more than it should. I tell my trip sitter about this and we discuss it. Though midway through my conversation, I feel it rising back up. Random memories start to play in my head, where I come to these revelations of the universe. I said to myself, intelligence and rationality was never present in the mind of who makes mistakes. I am slightly freaked out by this certain thought, because this thought sprung up in my mind like someone put it there. At this point, the effects worsen. It was like my visuals were twisting into each other. The colors started shifting and I see geometric shapes. On the center of every object, it was like a black hole or a vortex sucking in the energy of the universe. I do not get scared. I actually accept these hallucinations. Eventually, everything starts twisting to the point it makes a tear in reality. I am sucked into this tear where I am greeted by the last dimensions of the universe. I am in this room, shaped like an octagonal prism, which, in the best description I can give it, universal code being input into a reality computer. I am meted with myself, in a reality more real than ours. He tells me that my reality is basically a fraction of his universe. We are only 1% of what reality really is, a percentage of infinite. I am then put back into my fraction of reality. This drug is in fact stronger than any drug I have had, because when I am back into this soberness state, I completely believe everything. It had not even slipped into my mind that I was just tripping. Usually with psychedelics, I still remember, sometimes even during the trip, that I am under the influence of some sort of drug, but this had felt completely real to me the entire time. This is where the experience gets horrifying. When I'm expected to be put back into this reality, I am taken to the opposite. I am taken not into a room, but a wormhole, where I go through the entirety of the universe. I become every atom, every age, every height, everything. But when I'm taken to the end of this wormhole, I am out of reality. It all makes sense to me now. I had ripped a tear in reality. Now, reality must torture me. The wormhole put me in a kaleidoscopical room designed for the purpose of darkness. I see fractals in what looked like the devil. It had a gigantic ego, and it cursed obscenities at me and flipped out. It spat on me and called me a disgrace to the universe. For some reason, this entity felt like it had knew me before I did what I did. It was basically saying, "Come on, man, you know better." I am meted by 4 other entities standing close to each other. They felt like they were guarding me, so I do not escape from what is happening. I tried saying something to the guards, but they all rolled their eyes and continued to watch me. With DMT, I would have felt sort of an ego death. But with this drug, I still slightly felt like myself. When I go back into my world, nothing really happens. I am still utterly horrified because I seriously still believe all of this is true. So I just close my eyes and breathe frantically. My trip sitter asks if I am okay. I said, "Did you not just see me fucking disappear?" Apparently, I was looking at the ceiling and barely moving around during that part of the trip. I come back into the experience, and what I can only explain as the universe itself is staring at me dead in the eye. I look at this entity as God in some way, and bow down to it. I think to myself how mad it must be at me, and whatever it was going to do me. I seriously cannot explain this experience. It felt like what nothingness was. Consciousness was the only thing still there. I could not think, but I can still comprehend. It was more like a graveyard, a land of death, but the tombstones preserve what was there. I wake up, back in the fraction of reality I had lived my life in. I want to hammer this part of the story in completely. Everything before my trip I thought was not real, and everything that happened in my trip would be the realest thing that ever happened to me. So I was the most horrified I have ever had in my life. My reality was fake, and I just broke the real one, which I have just got killed by God for. When I came out of this part of the trip, I literally thought about ending my life. And the entire 18 hours left of this trip was the exact same thing. So this is what I had full-heartedly believed yesterday. My reality was only 1% real. I have broken the universe. Then God tortured me and let me off with a warning. I had literally believed this. The next day I was fully sober also. I felt waves and waves disassociation afterwards. When I told my friends this, they pissed themselves laughing. This was all it took for me to think, maybe this drug doesn't actually make a rip in reality. Synthetic drugs are the most hard-hitting, trippiest, most fun you could have, but they can also be the complete opposite. But at the end of the day, enough methylation and methoxy in any drug doesn't make it superior from other drugs. Even though they fuck you up, I think we both know that DMT, salvia, LSD, and everything natural is the better psychedelic.